Welcome, guys, to the Coaching Corner once again. And this time I'm joined by probably the two most handsome coaches on the team. For once, it's me, and secondary, it's Harry. No, just kidding. Just kidding. It's Jess and Harry here. So, first and foremost, of course, you haven't been on since a longer period of time, right? Like 2 months ago or so. I think, Harry, you were on the last time with Steve and with Mike.
Yeah, with Steve and Mike, yeah.
So, Jess, maybe you want to start off with actually giving the people a little bit of an update, what was going on here over the past 2 months now with you, with your training, nutrition, and your overall endeavors.
Yeah, so I have been massing for a few months now, which is incredible. So I'm feeling great, recovering from almost a year and a half of mostly dieting. It's feeling really good. Training is going great. My body composition compared to 2 years ago at the same body weight has drastically changed. Everything is perfect.
Oh, nice. Nice to hear. But you are also in the second lockdown now.
We have been on lockdown for 2 weeks, 2 more weeks, probably 4 more weeks total for the gyms to be reopening. But I really don't expect them to be open before the New Year's anyway. So
no,
it's gonna
neither
be a
do
while.
I. Not listening to the news each and every single day that there are more and more cases now, more and more people are being hospitalized. Even just here in the morning when I did my training session, I'm listening to the news, what has happened, or the news that were on the night before. And there they were saying that it's much worse than the first time of the lockdown. And the first lockdown was like 3 months. And when they are now saying that it's worse than the first time, I can't see them reopening things like in 4 weeks or now 2 weeks from now on, at least here in Germany. But how is it with you, Harry? Well, what's going on with you?
The UK's in lockdown 2.0.
Yeah,
as I'm sure you know, like most of Europe is. I'm not sure if it's better or worse than the first lockdown, but I know this time around there's a huge movement to reopen gyms in the UK. But I'm not entirely sure if it's like a nationwide movement or if it's just in my own subculture, and that's what I'm seeing because of my own social media accounts and stuff like that I follow. But I have seen some MPs and stuff talking about it because at least the data that the UK has shows that gyms aren't massively infectious relative to some other industries and things. It would be cool for them to reopen, but I'm not holding up massive hope for them to reopen.
I've seen one comment on the last Improvement Season podcast that someone was commenting on what Steve said about then the infection rate and the study that he said or she said that it's massively flawed or so, which could very much be the case because let's be real here, it's kind of one study and it's more like observational instead of like very much tracking the people. So it could very well be that the infection rate is actually significantly higher. Like here in Germany, I don't know how it is in other countries, so where you are at, guys, but here in Germany, they left the schools and the kindergartens open.
Yeah, they did that.
But it's crazy right now how many kids are now actually staying at home and also how many teachers. Right now, it's 3% of all the kids that are infected who are going to school and kindergarten. 3% is a lot, right? And also 4% of the teachers. So, and they are adamant about keeping the kindergartens and the schools open because they are saying it's safe and secure. And the data right now doesn't really suggest that. But anyway, this is not what we are here to talk about, of course.
This is the COVID podcast. Did we
Each and every single time we're recording a podcast. But I mean, right now, it's so present to each and every one of us. And of course, there has been good news here the last week of a potential vaccine coming from Pfizer and BioNTech. And that it has a what's it called? Like a 90% success rate of fighting off the COVID virus, which is huge. Normally, like a vaccine has only like a success rate of 60 or so. And that would be massive if that truly comes out and it's truly without any kind of long-term consequences, stuff like that. But we can be hopeful. We can be hopeful that next year everything's back to normal. I don't know that it will be, but let's wish and hope for the best. Today,
have a massive Revive presentation.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Then, today we wanted to talk about like early mistakes that clients are typically doing, and also like prerequisites for coaching. So I would say let's start things off with typical mistakes the clients are doing. And Harry, that was a topic you suggested, so I leave the stage for you to start off with.
Throw me right on the spot. I'm looking up into the sky like it's going to help me with my thoughts. So one of the main mistake that I see with mostly guys, because it's mostly guys that I tend to work with who come to me, is the main one is probably just trying to do too much at once. Like usually the first thing that I do with a client is I bring their volume right down. Like if they show me their program pre-coaching, I wouldn't be surprised to see workouts with like more than 30 sets in the whole workout. So for the most part, I'd say people are very, very happy to add volume to their workouts, but they're not paying much attention to the quality of the sets that they're doing. So one of the big changes that I make with clients is I try and shift their mindset away from more is better to better quality is better.
Man, absolutely. This is exactly what I'm doing as well. And I've seen it so often. Unfortunately, I have the feeling that many people who don't know exactly what it is that we are doing, like at Team Revive Stronger, because we are so closely associated with RP, and RP is known for like the volume landmarks and adding sets. I have the feeling that many people have the misconception that we are all about volume and increasing the volume, right? Whereas I'm always saying I'm all for appropriate amounts of volume. That can look quite different from individual to individual. Most of the time when people are then coming to us, they have been following our stuff, have been especially following RP stuff. Sorry for that. I'm still a little bit under the weather. And they have applied the concept of volume landmarks completely wrong in the past. And they have added up more and more volume because they are under the perception that more volume is equaling more gains and a better just outcome overall. And thus, or at least I, often get people who have done insane amounts of volume in the past, maybe still doing it, and are adamant about that this is the way to go about it. And when then they are seeking out help and you are actually kind of shaking up their worldview when it comes to this, then it can be quite complicated at times. And I even had it in the past. This only happened like once, but I had this one person who applied for the coaching. I created the program, explained everything, sent it over, and he canceled. He stopped, and because he was convinced that this is not enough volume for him.
Yeah, I've had that. Not since I've been working with you guys, but in my own coaching business pre-Revive Stronger, I had that, and I always kind of remember it fondly how I did exactly the same thing. So I created the program for this particular client, sent it across, and then completely ghosted. I saw the direct debit had been cancelled, and I actually got an email from this client's mum asking if I could refund the cost of coaching because he didn't feel like the program was advanced enough for his level. And just for context, this trainee was 19 years old and had a training history of about 2 years. So,
and it's a common mistake, and this is something that we've already talked about, Harry, in one of the episodes where we've both been on, like thinking that you are more advanced than you really are. And if you think a program is not suited for you because you think that you are too advanced, then most of the time, if not all of the time, you're not advanced, because this is the proof of it. The advanced person knows that he could easily grow and become bigger and progress just from the simple, simplistic, basic kind of things. And we know it. Right? We have plenty of thousands of case studies who are only having access to like minimum equipment and only doing like heavy compound lifts, and they are massive, right? But yeah, Jess, what's your take on the matter?
Yeah, it's only anecdotal, but one of my first clients that I had when I was an intern came to me with a bastardized version of an RP template that he was running wrong. And his week 1 was 150 sets. And his week 5 was about 200 sets. And he was like,
how much time did he spend in the gym?
Not a lot. That's the thing. So I was assuming, well, I checked everything, quality, technique, just overall, like the loads he was using. And we had to come from that to maybe 90 sets per week to start. So that was like a huge drop for him. And I had to do it gradually because it was too big for him to make a drop like that. But yeah, I was like, how are you surviving that? Because that's a shit ton of volume. So it's only anecdotal, but again, it shows that if you think you're doing things right and you're doing a lot of volume and you're not progressing, most of the time, there's something wrong with it. You're probably running the template the wrong way. Yeah, so it's only anecdotal, but I see a lot of people do that.
Yeah, and I think that the general recommendation of like between 10 to 20 hard sets per week per body part is a very good rule of thumb. If you're outside of that spectrum, like either below or above that, you have to take a closer look at everything. Like for me personally, unfortunately, I have to do a little bit more. And I'm more so in the range of like total amount of sets in the last week of my mesocycle, though more above those kind of ranges for the majority of my muscle groups. Not so much though for something like the hamstrings, the triceps, and the quads. It's a little bit below that, but especially for the back and the chest, I need to actually ramp it up. But this is something that you figure out over time. But you have to then take a closer look at everything that you're doing. There's not a badge of honor of doing more volume. That's not a good thing. And I'm always saying this. You shouldn't be proud of needing to do more. And perhaps there is something that you can do in order to lower the amount of volume to get more out of each and every single set and more out of each and every single rep. This is something that I'm trying to hone in with a lot of my athletes of like, instead of thinking, oh, this isn't enough, rather turn it around into a positive connotation and think, all right, I only have this amount of sets and I better make sure to make every single rep and every single set count as much as possible. It's like as if you're studying for something and you have two scenarios. In one scenario, you have plenty of time. And in that other scenario, you only have like 1 hour available per day. In that one scenario where you are only having 1 hour, you better make sure to actually take advantage of that 1 hour as best as you can and learn as efficiently as possible in that 1 hour with as much concentration and focus as possible, right? Whereas some other people, and we see it on a daily basis with people who are going to working maybe 8 hours, but from those 8 hours, only 4 or 3 have been very much effective or like efficient overall, because other than that, they have been slacking off, maybe having a coffee here, having a chat there, right? It's not very much effective and concentrated work, right? And that's how I like to see and take a look at the training protocol first as well. If you're distracted, if you're not fully in the zone, if you aren't able to push yourself in like a shorter time frame with only a handful of sets, then you need to reconsider everything and you need to have a closer look at everything just to outrule that you're not an outlier. And if it then turns out that you are an outlier, all right, be my guest and do more. But I have a very hard time, very, very hard time thinking about someone who needs more than 30 sets on something. Of course, there will always be outliers for certain things and also certain body parts, of course. Especially when you're doing a specialization block, it's also a completely different thing. But let's just say a normal overall routine that trains the entire body, I can't see, hardly ever have seen someone who needed more than 30 sets on something.
Yeah, no, I agree totally. I like to take I change clients' mindsets. So instead of thinking like, oh, I've only got 3 sets on this exercise, say you've got 3 opportunities to maximally stimulate the target muscle here, and then try and switch it to that perspective. And I like 100% of the time have the feedback that massively improved their session quality.
That's even a better way of phrasing it than I was doing it. So probably I'm going to steal it in the future as well.
That's fine. Just up my commission. It's fine.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And yeah, go ahead, Harry.
What was I about to say? One experiment I've done with a few clients and myself included is sometimes when their session lengths are really long, because they say that they need loads of rest and stuff like that, but then I'm a bit dubious of how much volume they actually need. get them to set a timer for 60 minutes and just see if they can get their session done in that time. And nearly always I find that people get a lot more out of their sets when they have that time limit on the session, because it means that they're much more focused on the session quality rather than just ending up getting distracted between sets. And then often some people who are doing, say, like 4, 5, 6 sets of an exercise, the only reason they're getting through all that work is because they're resting like 4 or 5 minutes between each set. So by putting a time limit on the session, it makes them realize that, oh shit, I was pumped to hell after 3 sets. I didn't need set 4, 5, and 6.
No, absolutely. And also there's also something that I'm trying to hit home in regards to staying focused. And once you're stepping into the gym, it's go time. And you have to actually turn kind of, I don't know, your inner bro on, where it's like, okay, you are stepping into the gym to only do one thing. And that is training. Training is, of course, also meant in a practicing kind of way. And that means that your sole focus and sole concentration should be to actually get the work done, right? Not in the sense of like, it's kind of something that you don't like, but more so, okay, I'm getting the work done in the most efficient manner without any kind of distractions. And I always say that the perception of effort, so RPE and also RER, is massively impacted by your overall concentration and focus. So also here, we can bring up 2 examples or 2 scenarios that I'm always bringing up. One, you're studying for a test where a lot of distractions around you are taking place. So music is in the background, your dog is barking, or just like walking through, I don't know, the living room or so. The kids are playing in the background. Also, television is on. So your neighbors are drilling into the wall, right? And you have to learn that paragraph. How much effort does it take to actually make that paragraph stick with you? A lot of effort, right? A lot of effort for such a simple task. And then we have that other scenario where no distractions are around you. How much effort does it then require for you to learn that paragraph? No effort at all. However, if you then were to match the effort, right, how much would you then be able to get done where you're not doing any kind of distraction or having any kind of distractions around you? Probably a lot. You could learn a lot in a very efficient manner. Whereas when the distractions are around you, the effort that you're perceiving is so much more elevated and the return is so much more lower. And that's the same when it comes to RER. Of so many people that they are then able to maintain the performance throughout each and every consecutive set, where it's like 12 repetitions for 3 RER, 12 repetitions for 3 RER, 12 repetitions for 3 RER. And I'm just getting very skeptical about it. Because just from a physiological perspective, we need to see a performance drop. Otherwise, it's impossible to maintain that performance at that level of exertion. And that's where I'm always then assuming that the focus and concentration is simply not there, that the mind is somewhere else. Because if you're really focused on the task, your level of exertion will be so much higher, where it's also matching the exertion of what the body is perceiving and not just what the mind is perceiving is a heavy task. Does that make sense?
That makes complete sense. I don't know, you go ahead, Jess.
No, go for it.
No, I was going to say, I said this to Hannah like a couple of days ago, my girlfriend. When I'm doing pull-ups at home in my garage gym, I get like 4 reps per set and it feels really hard. And then when I do pull-ups in a commercial gym, I get like 12 to 15 reps. And there's no difference other than the environment. So I must be, what I've identified there is that I must be someone who, I guess, the social facilitation, where I guess having an audience makes my performance better. When I'm in a dark garage on my own with no one around, my performance is like massively suppressed. And I think it's kind of similar. Like some people find it, they can bounce off of people and the environment's really important. And I find that when I'm training at home, I've got so many other distractions because I haven't had that kind of meditational time to get ready for the workout. And I think that's kind of important. Like I literally will go straight from, say, doing client check-ins to within 2 minutes, I'm trying to work out. And it's like, there's too many distractions in my head and I can't get focused on the session. So I guess what I'm saying is it's really important to give, like you say, like do whatever you need to do to make sure you're absolutely 100% focused on the workout. Because if you go in there with loads whirling around in your head, you're just not going to hit the requisite intensity that we're looking for.
No, absolutely. We've now talked about volume mistakes. and now also kind of intensity mistakes. Now we can perhaps also talk about exercises or frequency mistakes, and maybe you can talk or put something in here on that topic, Jess, if you want to.
Thank you. No, I was gonna say about what you guys were saying earlier. Most people tend to think they are snowflakes. They just like the idea of being outside of the norm and just, needing more volume and needing to do more things. But without sounding like a dick, like most of us are just actually average in terms of volume and everything. So yeah, there's that.
Otherwise, you could immediately see that if you're not a special if you are a special snowflake, it would be quite obvious from the get-go.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's important to individualize everything and just make sure that you know yourself and that you've tried the average technique before actually going above and beyond to make it work for you. Now, what were you saying? Frequency?
Frequency, or something like exercise selection also, or something in that ballpark, because then we are kind of covering the variables of programming.
Yeah, exercise selection would be an easy one. Most people think they have to squat. Most people think they have to deadlift. That's the main one. I have people coming and they're like, oh, like I really like to squat and deadlift 3 times a week. And I'm like, but do you need to? Is it a good exercise for you? Does it provide you a good stimulus to fatigue ratio? And I kid you not, maybe 60-70% of the time, I'm just making the numbers up, but a good chunk of the time, they don't need to squat, and squat is not a good stimulus to fatigue ratio for them. They don't need to deadlift because it's not a good stimulus to fatigue ratio for them. So I'm like, okay, we have to reassess what is the goal of your training. Do you want to grow muscle? Is this like hypertrophy, or do you just want to get strong on those? And most of the time, if they're training with us, they're not training for strength. They're not training for powerlifting. They're training for hypertrophy, growing muscle. And yeah, those exercises are just not good fit for them. And that's okay. Then I can provide them with answers and be like, okay, how about we try a hack squat? How about we try a leg press? Or how about instead of a deadlift, we just do like a bent over row, depending on what you're trying to target. But yeah, squats and deadlifts are just those really fancy exercises that are really technical, and most people screw up, and I just don't think they're worth it most of the time. I don't know if you guys have anything to say about that.
Hi guys, Steve here. Just wanted to take a moment of your time to remind you of the Revive Stronger member site. Inside you'll find a thriving forum, a growing exercise library, presentations, research reviews and courses. If you want to get involved, sign up via the description.
Yeah, I think that and that brings me to another point, and that is like getting your form checked. The things that we're talking about, the early mistakes we typically see with clients, are most of the time also the ones that we have gone through ourselves. And that's why it's kind of very similar to the one podcast where we have been talking about our early mistakes. But this is one of them, and that is like getting your form or technique checked from some professional eye. And it's hard to find someone that you can trust because there's so much bullshit out there. And I think that, for example, just take a look at the form police. They're calling so many people out, and so many people of those, they are personal trainers. And that is then, of course, for a new beginner, how should you decipher what is a professional or a trustworthy resource and who isn't? And then you're falling for the appeal of authority or falling for the typical fallacy of just going with the biggest guy in the room. Right? And then you are just like ingraining bad movement patterns maybe. But I think that it's very, very important then to always check yourself when it comes to the form videos, and also normally just on a regular basis recording yourself, because at times you will notice like, okay, this is good, this is bad. And also, once again, don't be too afraid to ask for help or feedback from someone. While also there, it's a little bit hard, of course, but if you are listening to this podcast, then perhaps you already have like a reasonable source to go to. But I also know when I was starting, I was posting like form videos in kind of Reddit groups and stuff where it's like, you did get the feedback from those individuals who are PTs who are being called out now by form police, right? And then you get those bullshit feedbacks. But perhaps then, and this ties also into one thing that Harry and I did in the past, where we thought too highly of ourselves and thought that we know so much that we actually didn't get a coach. And a coach, everything that we are saying, a coach can help you with. Avoiding possible outcomes or possible mistakes and potential mistakes in the future. And a coach can always help you. So I think that is very important to actually say that now, so that when we are moving forward, everyone knows like, okay, this can be avoided. I don't have to go through it in order to feel what it's like. Right? But yeah, once again, I think that taking form videos and get them checked, and don't be too afraid to ask for feedback, and also for some help from other people goes a very long way.
No, I agree, definitely. One of the mistakes that I made was not asking for form feedback sooner. So I'd been a PT for about 4 years before I ever actually asked someone to critique my form. And I always presumed that because I'd invested so much time and effort into learning about training and nutrition and all this kind of stuff, that me having good form was like a no-brainer. So I worked with a high-level powerlifter for a couple of sessions just to look at my technique. And I remember almost like not feeling insulted, but feeling really like it rocked my world when he gave me like loads of feedback, because I was expecting this person to just look at my videos and be like, yeah, all good. But then when I sent them across and I got like essays back, I was like, oh shit, maybe my form isn't as good as it needs to be. Admittedly, this was for strength purposes, but it definitely cleaned up lots of things that I was doing that I didn't realize. Like even things that even for bodybuilding purposes, like ripping the bar off the ground, for example, like the way I was doing some lifts was contributing so much extra fatigue for no stimulus. And then he really drilled it into me, the importance of controlling the eccentric, because for example, in a squat, even in a powerlifting meet, if you don't control the eccentric, you're not coming back up again. So it's just stuff like that. And I remember at the time being like, whoa, I was expecting literally just they look good, mate. And it was like the total opposite.
Did you have it as well that you then always came up with some kind of excuses or justifications as to why you did it that way? Because that's how I did it. When someone was actually critiquing my form, I was always like, yeah, I'm aware of that, but I'm right now, yada, yada, yada. And you came up with just kind of a poor excuse why you're not doing it the right way.
No, I did do lots like that. There was something I was going to say about exercise selection, actually, going back to it. I was so married to squat, bench press and deadlift for such a long time. And I think, like Jess was saying, a lot of clients are. And I'm now playing catch up with that and having to work around problems of being so vehemently attached to these 3 exercises that, as some people follow me on Instagram will know, I'm battling with constant tendonitis in my left elbow. I think that's definitely as a result of
all the masturbating.
It's my left arm.
Yeah, that's why. You want to have the strange hand or the stranger's hand.
Yeah,
exactly.
The stranger's hand. Sit on my left hand for a few hours. Yeah. So yeah, it's just like doing bench press 3 times a week, no matter what feedback my body was giving me. And yes, and one of the reasons again why I keep programming quad specialization cycles is because I'm trying to catch them up, because my quads have never really grown very well from squat variations, and I've never had a great mental connection with those variations. As soon as I kind of opened my heart to leg presses and stuff like that, it was like all of a sudden I was seeing the stimulus that I should have been seeing from squats, but I wasted like 5+ years of in my head telling me that squats were king. And yeah, and then if I'd have only again had a coach at the time to tell me like, why don't you try leg presses, I could have had nice meaty quads now, but I'm still stuck with chicken legs. So
unfortunately, it's the same with me. Like honestly, I'm always saying that I could have at least saved years of my potential lifting career, or let's put it that way, the potential time frame of building muscle mass more effectively. Now I'm in my early to mid 30s, and now I'm lifting since like 7 years already. If I would have actually had someone by my side who shows me how to lift, I could have been much, much better and much, much bigger, especially right now. And I wasted years actually spinning my wheels because I thought I didn't know how to lift appropriately. I didn't know anything about my muscle connection. I was lifting too heavy all the time, was just ego lifting, stuff like that, right? And also I felt that something like leg presses and Smith machine, or making use of the Smith machine, is only for pussies.
Yeah, Andy Cali shout out there.
Yeah, and I mean, once you realize that every kind of exercise and every variable that you are able to manipulate is only a means to an end, then you actually break free from taking a look at something as the be-all, end-all, right? It's the same when it comes to repetition ranges. It's only a range. There's nothing magical about 8 versus 12 repetitions or so. Also, proximity to failure, exercise selection in it for itself, right? Also, training frequency is only a means to keep the training quality high. That doesn't mean that 6 days is necessary. And sometimes it's falling back to the people who think that they need a lot of volume. For some people, they're coming to me and I'm just like, okay, if you want to train 6 days, be prepared that those training sessions will only last like 30 to 40 minutes. All right? And do you want this? Do you want to then go to the gym? Because the likelihood will be that you will feel that you could do much, much more. And then you will add more and more sets and run against the wall, because this is the perfect example is when people are switching over to twice daily training. They are treating each and every single session as one single session, like a training day, while you're just like actually just like cutting it up in the middle, right? And it's just I don't even know where I want to go with this any longer.
I was thinking we could address what was the? Oh yeah, you mentioned ego
frequency.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, another problem that I find is very, very common with people that I work with is just using way too much load on most of the exercises that they do, to the point now where I'm almost like, if I see anything more than like 10 kilos on a reverse fly, I'm like, I need to see a video of this as soon as possible. Like that.
Not only that, but also especially when they are using more load on exercises than you do.
Yeah, and I know it sounds quite egotistical, but yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm not the strongest guy, but I'm also not weak at all. And when there's someone, and also I'm not the biggest guy, right? But if there's then someone who's even smaller than me, I'm getting very skeptical about them being able to lift more load on certain things than I am, when they are not just like a genetic freak and also just tiny, but I don't know, someone like Z, he's very muscular, right? But it's also then just a red flag that just pops up where I'm just like, okay, send me some form videos. I would very much like to see that. And then they are most of the time standing in their own way. And this is kind of another mistake that many people are doing, that you are your own biggest enemy. And I think that many people are aware of that, but they are not so aware of that they are willing to then push that enemy to the side and make room for someone that is just there to help them. And sometimes then they are stuck in their ways and they are stubborn about the things that they have been doing before, but those things have not led to the progress that they would like to. So it's kind of, the irony lies in the details there, that they want to progress, but they continue doing what doesn't lead to progression.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I've noticed with some clients. You have a bit of a give and a take, don't you? Where, like, say you make a change to the programming or something like that, and they're like, "Oh, I normally do this thing," and then you kind of almost say like, "Well, what you're normally doing has led you to this point where you're hiring a coach in the first place. So why don't we try out this?" And then most of the time you get like a, "Yeah, okay, I'll go with what you say for a while and see how it goes."
Yeah, no, absolutely. Should we talk a little bit about nutritional mistakes maybe as well?
I was going to say frequency.
Oh yeah, the entire time our frequency. Yeah, go ahead, Jess.
No, because I was going to say, most people get to us and when they get the consultation, they're really motivated and they're like, I want to do this like 6 times a week. And I'm like, okay, realistically, what can you adhere to? Because you need to do this in the long run. Because if you do 6 days a week the first couple of months and then you're like, oh, this is too much, I have to go back to 4, it's just not worth it doing all this programming to just run one mesocycle with 6 days a week and then fall back to 4. So I always really ask them, like, is this something that you can sustain? Is it sustainable for you to actually be doing 6 days a week? Do you think you can do that realistically with your working hours, with everything that's going on in your life? And most of the time we fall back to like, we just find an average, we just fall back in the middle and be like, okay, maybe 5 days a week, and then we can see where we're heading with that. But yeah, I think some people think that more is better. And that really falls back to what we were saying earlier. Like, most of the time, more is not better.
Yeah, and it also perfectly aligns with the saying of like, it doesn't matter what it is that you want. It only matters what it is that you need. And especially when it comes to training and nutrition, right? I want so many things, but is it the best thing in order to get the best progress? Probably not. I would love to train each and every single day, maybe even 3 times per day. How sustainable is that over the long term, though? From a physiological perspective, but also from a psychological perspective. That is actually really tying into what it is that you've been saying, Jess. How sustainable is it over the long term? Only because you're motivated now doesn't mean that you have to go all in and then lose the motivation and the drive like later down the line. Why not chuck it up into pieces and always then serve the dish basically whenever it is that you're hungry, and not whenever it is that you are just like, meh, I'm actually not hungry, but yeah, give it to me, right? Because then at some point you're just like sick and tired of it. And then you are falling off the wagon, and maybe you come back like 3 months later. And that is the recipe for spinning your wheels. Falling off the wagon and then re-entering what it is that you've been doing before, right? Also, one thing then on this note, I wish that people, and I know that sounds crazy out of our mouth, but were to be a little bit more like bros. In regards to their nutrition, in regards to how they treat their recovery management and fatigue management, and also the intensity that they are bringing to the gym. I don't know who it was. I think it was on one of our podcast episodes that someone said the evidence-based community is unfortunately that many people are not training hard enough. So
I think
when
it was Mike and Steve in Mike's Q&A.
It could be, yeah, and there's so much truth to that, and I wish sometimes that both sides can learn from another. The bros can learn from the evidence-based field, but also the other way around, because the bros do a lot of things right, and they treat, for example, recovery and fatigue management. They put a lot of emphasis in that. Because they know, like, okay, I'm not growing when I'm training. I'm growing when I'm recovering. And that is true. You're inducing a stimulus, and then you need the time to recover in order for those adaptations to take place. Also, then, when it comes to eating, whether it's the way to eat in regards to having chicken breasts, rice, and broccoli or not, I don't want to actually go as far as saying like everyone should eat that way, but I think many people could benefit from actually looking at that and taking some lessons away from it, and that is eating more wholesome foods throughout the entire day instead of making something like, if it fits your macros, now your religion. Because this is when so many people are actually having a hard time either sticking to a caloric deficit or also gaining, because they are just eating so much junk food, and then they are feeling bad and they are feeling tired, lethargic. They are not getting a sufficient amount of vitamins and minerals and stuff like that. So eating more like a bro, or let's put it a different way, eating more like an adult is also something that I would very much encourage many people to do. And then it falls back to the last point that I brought up, the intensity that you bring into the gym. Like it or not, but bros, they fucking train hard, right? Most of the time, not all of them. Some people think that they train hard, but they actually don't, right? But most of the people, they just destroy themselves. That's why they only can recover from something like a bro split, right? Because they are doing like 30 sets in a single session for the chest. But that induces some growth, because they are also just like fucking destroying them. Instead of being like, yeah, no, I need to keep 4 RER in the tank. But the thing is, in reality, they never felt what 4 RER really feels like and looks like overall. And thus, they are just going into the gym and they don't do anything at all, basically. Right? So there's a lot to be learned. from both sides. And I wish, though, because we are primarily speaking to the evidence-based realm, that I wish that some people would be more like pros in our industry.
No, I
Let
agree.
me piggyback on that. I think one of the mistakes people make when they train is actually taking everything to failure and not learning what a true 3 or 4 reps in reserve is, because they think 3 or 4 reps in reserve, like when I program for them and then I do the intro video and I show them like, okay, on the first week, you're going to be between 3 and 4 reps in reserve for compound movements. And they're like, oh, but is this going to be enough to stimulate some muscle growth? And I'm like, it's going to take a while to get there, but once you learn what a true 3 reps in reserve, for example, is, you will realize that it's fucking hard training. It's not for pussies. It's still hard training. Like, you're not that far from failure. If realistically, you're just 3 reps from failure. So it's really close. So yeah, I think that's a mistake people do when they start at least coaching, started coaching with us or with people who work with reps in reserve or RPE. It's thinking that they have to take everything to failure, or it's not going to be worth it, or induce any stimulus. But yeah, I think that's massively flawed. Reps in reserve is hard.
I absolutely agree with this. However, I also need to then bring up that these individuals who think that they are always training to failure and don't know what 3 aria or 2 aria feels like and looks like, are most of the time also the ones who don't have the form and technique nailed down. And that then leads to other issues, such as that they are basically just generating systemic fatigue or so, that they never get that sensation of like local muscle fatigue. And that's why they feel the need to always push it to failure in order to just get somewhat of a sensation or so. And then they are just getting dumps the next day because they've been in such a compromised position, right? And I think that the ones who know how to very much maintain a proper technique, they are also the ones who know that 3 or 4 aria can be hard, because all of the stimulus from each and every single set is going towards the muscle group that is actually intended to be worked in that session, right? However, if your form on a per rep basis is completely different to the prior repetitions or so, of course, you have no idea what this may feel like, because you've never in your life experienced true local muscle failure or just fatigue, right? It was always coming with a lot of systemic fatigue as well, and maybe a lot of body language, and then something gave in, but it wasn't truly just that muscle group, but it was also contributed with other things as well. And that's why I would be very cautious with that statement of like that people are always then training to failure and not knowing because of that what 3 or 4 aria feels like. I think that the failure that they have been experiencing in the past is not true muscular failure, but more so like mental failure, and also just like overall central nervous system failure instead of like local muscle failure, right? Because at some point you're just like, you can't fire your motor units anymore.
I agree totally with that. I've actually, you made me think of something. When I've had clients who've come from a CrossFit background or a competitive sports background, they are very much like that, where they will train their absolute arse off, but they don't know how to induce local muscular fatigue. So it's the same sort of thing. Like using the CrossFit example, I tend to find when I've had people coming from a CrossFit background, I'll kind of show them footage of Rich Froning, because I'm like, look, he is very measured and controlled of everything that he does. And then when you watch his tempos and stuff like that relative to the other athletes in the event, he doesn't fly out of the gates at 100% and try and kill himself. He's very measured and controlled, and his tempos stay consistent all the way through, and he consistently wins. And I found that example worked quite well with the people with the athletic background who had been coached into just going 100% all the time, and then showing them what happens when you actually take a step back and consider what you have to do and go slow and controlled, rather than just firing yourself like a missile at whatever your target is.
No, absolutely. Because of your drop-off, I completely am now kind of gone as well. But maybe we want to now touch on the nutritional side of things as well. So, Jess, do you want to go ahead and say something about nutrition? I don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe the first mistake that comes to your mind when it comes to nutrition.
Hey, Pascal here. I just quickly wanted to remind you of our online coaching service. At Revive Stronger, we put a huge emphasis on the personal aspect of our coaching. And if you want to take your physique and knowledge to the next level, hit the link in the description below.
Yeah, I think most of the time people make the mistakes of comparing themselves to other people who are the same as them in terms of body weight, height. Like small females will compare to other small females, and big males compared to big males, and they're like, oh, he's able to mass on 4,000 calories, so I'm going to have to mass on 4,000 calories. Or even worse, females being like, oh, she's cutting on like 1,200 calories, so I'm going to have to be cutting on 1,200 calories. And I'm like, no, this is something we're going to have to work out together, and we're not going to get it right the first week. It's going to take a while, and then we're going to make adjustments, but eventually we'll get there. But because someone is cutting on that low amount of calories doesn't mean you're going to be cutting on that low amount of calories, or vice versa.
No,
yeah,
absolutely.
I think comparing themselves is usually they're mentally dreading it, and they're mentally preparing themselves, but like not in a good way. It's just really negative thinking in advance. I get that a lot with small females. Sometimes I'll have to push calories very, very low because they're sedentary and they just don't do a lot of NEAT during the day, and that's just the way it is. And they're small. Like I have this one client, she's 50 kilos, not even 48 kilos now. And she has a sedentary job. She's eating less than like 1,300 calories, which can be crazy when you think about it. And people are like, oh, well, you have to like ramp up her metabolism, or you have to ramp up her calories because she can't be sustaining that. And I'm like, for her body weight, this is quite normal. There's nothing crazy there. So yeah, comparison is usually the big one. And I think it's detrimental in the end.
No, absolutely. And also in your example, like, is it fair? No. But in the end, that's the cards that have been dealt to you, right? That's why you need to play with those cards now. There's not really a lot that you can do about it. And thus, complaining about it doesn't really make any kind of sense and doesn't make the situation any kind of better. Like, honestly, nothing will change with you complaining about it. That's basically also something that I said in one of my latest vlogs about the way I feel about my body composition, that I've never been at a point where I was happy with the way I look. But complaining about it will definitely not make it any kind of better. There's only one option that could cause some change, and that is me putting in the work and effort. That's all there is to it.
Agreed. Yeah. No, I changed location. Did you tell? Can you tell?
Yeah.
It might be a little bit echoey now, so apologies for that.
It's all right.
But so one thing you mentioned earlier on in the podcast is something I wanted to touch on was people who have a very, very poor nutrition quality, and they have way too much of a focus on if it fits your macros over having a good nutrition structure. That's something that a lot of my clients have. I guess it's a mistake they're making when they first come to us, and that's being totally married to if it fits your macros. I've got 2 clients at the moment who I'm working on trying to fix this with, where we're massing for both of them, but you end up getting really unreliable data because there's no nutrition structure, there's no consistent meals, salt content is all over the place, meal timing's all over the place. And then when you actually look at the data in your sheet after like 3 or 4 weeks, it's undetectable whether this person has gained or lost any weight, because you can see, like some days they're like 2 kilos heavier than other days, and they're like, oh, that day I went to Chipotle, and then it's like, oh, and that day I just didn't eat because I wasn't hungry, and then this day. And it just shows, like you said, just eating like an adult, and kind of, yes, you can eat all these foods on your, like, whatever your nutrition goal is. You can fit in Pop-Tarts, and you can fit in chocolate and fast food and stuff, but it doesn't mean that you have to, because it actually makes things so much harder. And at the end of the day, like, you're not missing out on anything if you don't eat junk food every day. And I feel like there's a big kind of FOMO factor in the people that love efficient macros, like a fear of missing out. And it's because a lot of these people have a history of being in like a perma diet, you know, like we've all been there, where you're trying to get shredded and you've been trying to get shredded for like 2 years. And then as a result of kind of having to be as restrictive as possible to get there, because of not knowing necessarily the things that you need to know to get yourself in shape, or not having the skills to get in shape. Then when it comes to massing, all of a sudden you're like, I can eat all of these foods that I've been missing out on for months, and people don't want to give that up. And it can be quite frustrating as a coach, because you almost feel like the data that you're being given is really unhelpful, and it'd almost be easier if you didn't have it, because like I said, like people's body weight changing like 4 kilos over the course of a week and stuff like that. And yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is one of the best things you can do to, I guess, make your life so much easier from a data analysis perspective is just to have a consistent structure, and it will save you a lot of money on fast food as well.
Absolutely. And also what I want to touch on, because of food quality as well, is that many people have too much of a positive connotation with junk food and highly palatable food, and too bad of a connotation with healthy, wholesome foods, right? When you ask someone, why is it that you've had that pizza, or when they are saying that they are craving that, why is that? And you ask them, why is that? Then most of the time, the answer is like, yeah, I just wanted to switch off once and do myself something good. Okay, so you're basically rewarding yourself with junk food and with something that is bad, like in comparison to something else. Of course, we can't really label food, but in a sense we can, because if you really compare it, what is probably a better food? Something that is very highly nutritious, so with lots of minerals and vitamins, and perhaps low in the palatability scale, in comparison to something that is, I don't know, Twinkies. What's better, right? Of course, I know where this notion is coming from, that people don't want to label food, but we can still categorize it in food that is more beneficial than others. Right? And especially those highly palatable, highly processed foods. You have to think about it. There are chemists sitting in a lab trying to produce the most tasty food there is, where you can't resist, because they are trying to trick your brain into wanting more. They are taking advantage of your evolution, basically, the way you are structured. This is their sole purpose, so that you are going to buy that product once again, right? And this is something that you have to realize. And if you then have a positive connotation with these kind of things, then you are more likely to fall into that behavior once you're feeling bad, once things are a little bit more challenging, because of also a hormonal response, maybe some dopamine that is then being released because you're doing something good for yourself. This is all then here and up in your head, right? Where you have to break free from that positive connotation with those foods. And I also know, and this is something that Katie and I try to avoid big time when it comes to raising our kids, we don't want to reward our kids with food, because that is the worst thing that you can do, basically, because you're starting to go down a rabbit hole that they can't escape from when they are grown, or it's at least super hard for them to escape from that vicious cycle. Because whenever they are feeling bad, whenever something failed in their life, they will always then fall back to eating something, maybe some chocolate, right? And I know that everyone knows one person that when they are feeling bad, they say like, yeah, I just had a bar of chocolate to make me feel good again.
It's usually one of those bars that's like the size of a less.
Yeah, and this is a big problem, right? That you are putting a badge on certain foods, but you are turning it around. You're putting a good and positive badge on the foods that are in it for itself, if we want to categorize it, bad foods for you and your overall endeavors. And you have to break loose from that. And as soon as you break loose from it, it's like a relationship. At first, you have still the positive connotation in your head, and it's like you're starting to question yourself, you're starting to doubt your decision of like breaking up with your girlfriend or boyfriend, and you just think about the positive experiences you had together. But the more time passes by, the more objective you can look back and be like, most of the time, even in hindsight, be like, okay, why did I even, or why was I together with that person? I can't even fathom to be together with that person any longer. And that's the same thing with also highly palatable food. The longer you didn't have that, the less you will crave that. And this will only be beneficial for you in the long term, not just from a financial perspective, such as Harry said, but also just from a health perspective.
I think one of the common mistakes is people coming to us and thinking that tracking calories and flexible dieting is going to fix their problems with food. And I think that's really flawed. I think it really comes down to behavioral changes. Like if a scale and MyFitnessPal account was the I'm not finding the word I'm looking for. Was like the fix. What? I can't speak. But like, if we just needed like a scale, body weight scale, a weighing scale, and MyFitnessPal to fix people's issues with food or fix obesity, like that would be it. But it's not the case. Like we need to install behavioral changes that go further, tracking calories and tracking macros and flexible dieting. And it really comes down to learning, how to have a little bit more servings of fruit and veggies throughout the day, have to have more lean protein, have to have protein with each meal. And yeah, I think behavioral changes is really the goal here, instead of just tracking calories, tracking macros, or flexible dieting.
I think it's not just one thing. I think it's the thing. I'm always trying to hone in on every one of my athletes that habits need to be formed and habits need to be maintained. Because once it's a habit, right, it's an automated process that runs in the background. It's like an algorithm that you first have to actually program. You are then doing a little bit of experimentation whether the algorithm works, and if not, then you're making some adjustments. But at some point, that algorithm is there, and it does run in the background with you needing to think of it anymore. And this is the way you should look at it as well. You need to start building those algorithms for yourself, that one trigger leads to the next trigger, leads to the next trigger. But this is also how you then can detect like bad habits as well. Because it's most of the time that one trigger leads to a certain outcome as well. And I think that if you want to be successful, and this is one big mistake I see with not just in fitness or people who are approaching us, is that most people want too many things at the same time. And also that they are not willing to put perhaps the amount of work in and also time in that is required in being successful. Funny enough, I had that discussion with Katie yesterday, that how many people do you know who are very good at one specific thing, maybe even a professional in one specific field? There aren't many people because so many people want to be a jack of all trades and thus a master of none. Right? But those people who are super successful and also well known, they are most of the time not well known for many things, but they are well known for one thing and one thing only. And this is because they have put all of their focus and all of their concentration towards that specific goal and outcome. And if you want to become very good at something, you have to realize that this also requires you to maybe give up on other certain things. And I know it's a super tough pill to swallow.
That would be tough to swallow.
Yeah, that would be tough to swallow. A super tough pill to swallow. And some people are not willing to do that for at least the aesthetic endeavors. And that is absolutely all right. But at the same time, if you want to be good at something, you have to come to terms with that there won't be lots of room for other things then. If you really want to, really want to be good at something, right?
Yeah,
No, agreed, definitely. And I think a lot of clients that we have when they come to us, they understand that to an extent, but a lot of the time they don't understand, just like they conceptually understand that it's going to take up a lot of their mental focus and their life focus. but they don't practically understand it for a lot of the time until we actually start working on it. Like I know you guys have probably had it too, where occasionally we'll have clients leave after the initial 3-month commitment period. And I think you could probably group them into a category of just being people who didn't realize how much work it was going to be to achieve the goals that they had. Because especially sometimes like you have a client and they come to you and they have like four days a week to train, and they might work a shift pattern, say like night shifts and day shifts. And they also have quite a buzzing social life. And then you tend to find that often weekly in the check-ins, it's a case of them telling you what they haven't done rather than telling you what they have done. And I think, again, for a lot of people, it's just the case of like they didn't have that practical understanding of how much of their life they actually have to give to excel in this particular area.
Yeah, especially like the first steps are easy, but then excelling at something will become harder and harder with time. Also, each and every single skill is like that. The first steps are super easy, like learning an instrument, for example, right? You will make such rapid progress in the first initial month and years, up to the point where you then probably have to dedicate like 2-3 hours per day to get better. And most of the people aren't willing to do that, right? But this is what it takes to actually become very good at something. Like, for example, like professional musicians who are, I don't know, in an opera, who are playing in an orchestra or so, right? They are the ones who are treating it as work. They are like playing the instrument like 8 hours per day or doing some kind of theoretical work or so, right? This is what it takes to very much excel at something. That doesn't mean that this is the same for bodybuilding or so, but if you want to get better and better and better after those initial newbie gains, then you probably have to come to terms with needing to put more work and effort in, unless you're just like a genetic freak. But I don't think that the most or the majority of our listeners are genetic freaks. And that's why everything we said in this podcast, as always, right, is not meant in a criticizing way where people are now pissed off because we are pointing fingers at them. No, most of the things we have gone through ourselves as well. This should be kind of a call for direction for you, where you are just like open, or someone is actually now coming to you and opening up your eyes for reality and for the facts, instead of just like saying, no, everything is all right, just move along. No, this can act like a catalyst for you in order to then go out there and change something now.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to bring up, because I think it's important, it's lack of communication. And I think that's something we massively miss, or like clients massively miss. And that's why when I start up, when I do my intro video, when I do the consultation, I'm being very, very clear on that. This is an open field. This is a safe space for you to be sharing everything. Like if you have a binge, if there's something you don't understand in your exercise sheets, if there's anything that needs clarification, please contact me throughout the week. All of my clients have my WhatsApp number as like an urgent way of reaching out to me, or my email. And I always tell them, if there's anything you need something, like if you need something throughout the week, please reach out, please communicate with me. Because if you have something that bothers you, if you have a binge issue or something, like, it's something we can fix. It's something we can talk about on the spot. And that's better than just doing it with the weekly check-in, where you just like wait for that hour to happen, if it makes sense. I'm terrible at explaining myself today, but hopefully that makes sense.
But especially because you are there and they hired you to help them. So why do they hesitate then in reaching out to you, right, when it's urgent or so? The sole purpose is to get help in every kind of aspect of their training and nutritional endeavors. And this is also one of them. And this can only be achieved. And I think that every kind of relationship can only flourish when there's an open and honest communication with another. So yeah, I totally agree. So guys, I think we are coming up on time. We didn't actually manage to talk about the prerequisites for coaching after all, which is good because we had a very, very good chat about everything. And once again, this is meant for kind of an eye-opening discussion for other people as well, because this is an educational educational content. This is an educational channel, and I really do hope that people take something away from it. And yeah, perhaps there's one single thing where they are now just like, oh shit, yeah, this is me, and now I can change something about it. But yeah, guys, do you have any other last words to say before we're ending the show?
Apologies for my technical difficulties.
That's absolutely all right.
No, not really.
These are your last words.
Yeah, that's what I say
Cool.
to everyone all the time, just as a disclaimer.
Cool. Yeah, guys, as always, thanks for tuning in. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button so that you always know when the next episode is coming out. But other than that, as always, once again, thanks for tuning in, and until next time.
Bye.
Bye.
So I'm Steve Hall, founder of Revive Stronger and a coach of Revive Stronger.
My name is Pascal Flor. I'm the co-owner of Revive Stronger and also a coach, of course.
Revive Stronger has probably been going solidly for 3 years, roughly about 3 years.
Revive Stronger, to me, it is becoming kind of my child, my foster child. It's the gathering and getting together of like-minded people.
We've been expanding the coaching team, which is helping us help more people, but each coach can only help a certain number of people.
Right now, it's all over the place. We have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, but there isn't that community aspect behind that.
And so the next step for us is developing a membership site.
So basically, we want to create a family and a community that is then benefiting from another.
A really cool community for people within our little niche is going to be a website.
They will get early access to our podcast.
You can access us, ask us questions.
The community aspect, we have a forum there. You can ask questions, but also you can log your journey.
There's also going to be courses on there.
Courses, presentations on different topics. Discount of past seminar footage. We will log our journey as well. We'll start vlogging.
We're going to have documentaries.
Our entire athletic journey. Furthermore, they get access to an exercise video library.
The exercises that we love for hypertrophy and maximizing hypertrophy, we're going to go through those in depth, telling you how to execute them.
We kept them concise and also mobile friendly so that you can watch them in between your sets.
I'm super excited to grow this community. The amount of value that we're going to be delivering is huge, and I'd love you to be part of it.
You will get so much out of that.
I'll see you inside.